Hello and happy Thanksgiving. My name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse, and today I'm talking a really special movie, one that I've been highly anticipating for a while. Today I am talking the movie Stephen Spielberg's The Fabelmans. Now, this is the most recent film from Stephen Spielberg. It is best described as a coming-of-age, slight biopic about the man himself, Stephen Spielberg, basically what inspired him to become a director. So we're going to jump into this movie. You'll notice, one, that probably my sound quality is a little bit off. I'm working in a new studio. I don't have everything set up. We're getting it all set up, so I'm recording on my phone with a ring light. I have the glare in my glasses, which is bugging the crap out of me, but we're carrying on because I am so excited to talk about this movie. For those who do not know what The Fabelmans is, the description is The Fabelmans follow Sammy Fabelman, a young Jewish boy whose parents take him to see the greatest show on earth. It is at that moment Sammy realizes film holds a powerful transfix over him and begins making movies with the support of his mother and trepidation from his father. The cast stars Gabriel LaBelle as Sammy, Michelle Williams as his mother, Paul Dano as his father, Seth Rogen as the friend slash pseudo uncle, and then Judd Hirsch and Chloe East round out this cast. And anyone who has listened to this channel, anyone who has heard me on any of my social media, they know I was highly anticipating this movie. This was the film that from the beginning, I thought this sounded like a great idea. I was really excited for this idea, learning more about Spielberg, knowing that this movie would tackle a lot of this darkness that is within Steven Spielberg. This is a very therapeutic movie for him. Without going too much into this movie, for those who do not know the full life story of Steven Spielberg, this film really does follow his parents. This is a movie about Steven Spielberg's relationship to his own parents. And at this moment, you might be thinking that sounds self-indulgent, and I understand that fear. Let me just say right now, this movie never came across to me as self-indulgent. This is a movie where someone is working through a lot of trauma, and he's kind of putting it on film for us. But at the same time, I never found that this film was just somebody just ranting and raving about their life and just the miserableness of his life. This is something that's very relatable. This is a young kid who discovers something that he loves and wants to do it for the rest of his life, to the support of one family member and then the apprehension of another family member. So it's this character being pulled by two separate forces. And what works so well about this movie is the performances of the two parents. Paul Dano and Michelle Williams are great in this film. I think the clear standout between the two is Michelle Williams. She gets the much flashier role. She gets to be a lot more loud. She gets to be a lot more vibrant. This character really needs to just come to life. For a lot of the film, this is Sammy seeing his mother as Stephen remembers her. So it's very bright, it's very charismatic, it's very loving. He has the camera is so soft when it is on her. You can just feel the love and remembrance that Stephen has for his mother. But as the film goes on, Stephen ages, or Sammy, I should say, Sammy in this film ages. He learns that his mother isn't the saint. She's not this perfect woman. And a lot of the film is that journey, discovering that your parents are people and the mistakes that they make along the way and what you have to learn to deal with and get over. And that's the same with Paul Dano's character, who plays Steven Spielberg's father, or in this case, Sammy's father in The Fabelmans. He is great in this role. He's so understated and underrated, but he is just able to just convey so much emotion, and you feel for Paul Dano and Michelle Williams' relationship in this movie. You understand how these two characters can fall in love, and you also understand the divisions between them. Michelle Williams' character, the mother, is the artist, where Paul Dano is the scientist. It's the math versus the art, and it's those two ideas coinciding and conflicting with each other, and we get to see that in Sammy. We get to see the artistic side of him, and we get to see the practical side of him, how he makes these films, the logic that he makes the tools that he invents for these films, the little editing tricks that he does, and you get to see these parents. And what I love about this is it's a three-dimensional look into this. Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner write this movie, and I think it was really a great idea for Spielberg to bring his frequent collaborator Kushner into this, because this film is autobiographical, largely in Steven Spielberg's accounts. A lot of these things actually happened to him. A lot of the topics being discussed with his parents, that's all true. It's a lot of Spielberg's, like I said, inner childhood / even like trauma / painful memories coming throughout in the screen. And it could become a little bit too personal, and maybe Spielberg indulges in the worst aspects of himself. Kushner comes in there to balance that and allows for these characters to feel real. If you had no idea the myth of Steven Spielberg, what his life was, what his legacy was, this film is still very enjoyable, because ultimately it's a great coming of age film. It is a film about somebody finding their passion and growing up with that, and how they relate to that. And the film that reminded me the most of was Richard Linklater's Boyhood, where it is literally somebody growing from scene 1 to the last scene, and we get to see their boyhood. We get to see them mature, and we get to see them develop. We get to see them in relationship. We get to see them as they struggle in relationships. We get to see them as their parents grow older, as the family fundamentals change. We get to see siblings come into the picture. We get new relatives, we get life, we get death, we get all of it in front of us. And it makes for such a moving portrait of familyhood in that time era that is still very relatable today. And like I said, this movie impressed the heck out of me. The strongest aspects of this movie come when the film is at its most personal. Yes, is it fun to see the character of Sammy basically learn to become the greatest film director of all time in front of our eyes? He's very much an auteur. Those moments are very great, and I think had this film used more of them, it would have become not maybe self-indulgent, but it would have become this moment where the film is it's just that, and we get it at some point. He only does it for 1 or 2 scenes. And it builds the myth of what we know Steven Spielberg to be. We get to see this authorship in Sammy. But then the film also strives away from that. We get to see the difficulties of being an artist, literally in the sense of like, that's what drives. That's how you look at the world. And even times when you don't want to look in the world that way, you look in the world that way. You just see your life behind the eyes of a camera. And that's true for all art. That's true for anything that anyone is passionate about. This is a film that takes the ideas of art and our love of art and allows us to process our emotions. So it shows how much our art is influenced by ourselves and our current life, and how we use our art to understand ourselves better. And in that way, this film really works in meaningful ways. All the performances in this film are wonderful. I already pointed out Michelle Williams and Paul Dano. Everyone in this film is perfect. Gabriel LaBelle as Sammy Fabelman, as he grows a little older, is really good in this film. He gets to have a lot of just the really heartbreaking scenes. And this film, in combination with Michelle Williams, they have such a great dynamic, and it really builds the emotional aspects of this film as we get to see Sammy dealing with struggles in his life, and again, getting to learn that his parents aren't angels, that they are people. And it's that journey and it's that feeling. We get to see this character, Sammy, fall in love. We get to see those emotions, the confusion of teenage years. He pulls this off so well and brings that kind of classic Steven Spielberg charm to it. He has this young boy attitude to him, and it's this character growing up before our eyes. And speaking of that, this film really invoked the 1980s Steven Spielberg filmography. It invokes that early Steven Spielberg magic, and that's largely due to because of the score from John Williams, which is a very sweet, often very emotionally fraught, just powerful score that just seeps in throughout the film and is used to just wonderful effects, especially in the quieter moments. I think John Williams is a really underrated character dramatic composer. There are just so many scores in this film where you feel your heartstrings being tugged, and combined with the actors doing what the actors are doing, it works to such wonderful effects and really creates this feeling of just like that I'm floating, that I'm watching something so magical. This is one of the few films in a while, and especially in Stephen Spielberg's career in quite a while, where I felt young again. I felt like I was a kid watching E.T. for the first time, watching Jaws for the first time, watching Jurassic Park for the first time. I had a very similar experience to The Fabelmans. It took any cynicism that I could have about this film, about this journey, about just film in general and the film discourse of 2022, and I checked it at the door. I was able to be completely immersed in this movie in a wonderful way, largely due to Spielberg's direction, the writing, and the performances. A few more that I want to stand out. Seth Rogen is really good in this movie. He does a much more toned down comedic version of a Seth Rogen character, but he has scenes in this film where you just understand this character perfectly. And it's such a subtle performance, and I think people might be a little disappointed in him where they're like, oh, he's not the typical Seth Rogen type character that the film kind of sets him up to be. You at the beginning, you're like, oh, okay, I get what Seth Rogen is going to be in this film. And it's not that you don't get that, it's that it's a lot more complicated, and we see a lot more just nuance from Rogen, and it's a much more quieter performance than I think you're used to. You'd think he's kind of the comedic relief. He has some really funny scenes in this movie, but I wouldn't call him the comedic relief in this movie, and he does it all so masterfully. Judd Hirsch comes in for a few scenes in this movie, steals the movie when he's in here. He just has kind of the thesis of this movie of, again, artist, and how we express ourselves through that, and the heartbreak that can come from that. And that scene really is like the driving engine of this film. Like, that is the locomotive of this whole Fabelman story. And he is able to just do it in such a powerful monologue that never comes across as overly written, overly dramatic. It just feels like true family members talking about something that only they can understand because they are both artists and they see that in one another. The big scene stealer in this movie, though, and I have to give her credit, is Chloe East, who plays Sammy's girlfriend in the second half of the film as Sammy goes off into high school as a teenager. She is so laugh out loud funny in this movie. Every joke with her in this movie hits in a really wonderful way. And by the way, this movie's really funny in a way that I did not expect it to be. There are a lot of just great jokes, great one-liners, great scenes, great visual gags with the camera in this film that I think some people might be apprehensive because when they hear visual gags, I think they might think farce, and maybe Spielberg's not the funniest guy of all time. But in this movie, it really works to wonderful effects. Like I said, this movie impressed the heck out of me. This is a film about one of our greatest film directors talking about his life and talking about it honestly. And it's so personal. And I think that's what I liked about this. What works so well is he's willing to show us the hard stuff in his life. He's willing to show us kind of these moments in his life that have always stuck with him and that have caused him great pain. And it's moments like this, you realize what this film is. You realize why he wanted to tell this film. You realize why that this is a film that he decided to develop during the COVID-19 pandemic. This is a film that he developed when he was living at home with his whole family. And you understand why he wanted to get this specific movie out of his chest. And it makes sense knowing his family history, knowing that his parents had recently passed away. His mother passes away in 2017. His father passes away in 2020. Knowing all of that, it just really enforces the thematic value and strengths of this movie. But again, you don't have to know that to enjoy this film. I think this film is universal just due to its thematic value, its emotional tenderness in the center. It is the typical Spielberg sentimentality, but it works to such wonderful effects. It never feels cynical. It never feels like a filmmaker just self-indulging in their worst, being like, this is how I became the greatest film director of all time. This is why I'm revered. This is why you should all love me. This is why you should feel pity for me. It's never that. This is simply somebody saying, this is my life story. This is how I got here, and this is the pain that I went through, and this is the happiness that I experienced as well. All of this makes me. It is truly like reading a biography on somebody and just it makes you appreciate who Steven Spielberg is to a much larger degree. After watching this film, I feel more connected, and watching it after, I go back and I look at scenes in Close Encounters, I look at scenes in Jaws, I look at scenes in Raiders of the Lost Ark, all the way through, even Schindler's List, Catch Me If You Can, Bridge of Spies. You understand what those films are more about now that you have the context of the Fabelmans in there. And with that all said, as somebody who loves film, as someone who loves Steven Spielberg, as someone who loves all those films that I just mentioned and really values what Spielberg has done and done into my life, this is a movie that works in wonders for me. I can't recommend this movie enough. It's sewn up. This is the best picture film of the year. This is going to win the awards. There's no competition to it. It's so cut and clear, dry. This is a wonderful film. I can highly recommend it. I think you should check it out immediately. Go see it in theaters because it looks beautiful. Cinematography, music, acting, Spielberg at his finest. This is one of the best Spielberg films that I have seen. I love this movie and I can't recommend it enough. The Fabelmans is getting the 4 out of 4 stars from me. So The Fabelmans, needless to say, I think you should check it out in theaters ASAP. I got to see it at my local art house theater in Sacramento. I would suggest you do the same. Go out, go support films like these, where this is a film that we just don't get enough of. We don't get enough personal stories anymore. I enjoy the superhero films. I enjoy the action films. I enjoy the big IP films as much as the next guy. But these films are my bread and butter. I grew up on Spielberg, and we don't have many Spielberg films left. And the fact that he can still deliver in such a high pace, that he can deliver on such a wide scale, I love it. The Fabelmans is a huge recommendation. Go see it. Guys, I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving weekend. I know there's a lot of films coming out right now. I'm seeing Glass Onion tomorrow. I know I will be seeing The Menu. I'll be trying to catch up on some VOD releases like The Woman King. I have a few more videos coming at you. I'm still designing the studio. If you're also interested in some of my Oscar predictions, check out my latest video where I reviewed 10 Oscar films. It's right here, right on this video. Just click that link right there. And let me know what you think, guys, of The Fabelmans. I'm really curious to see your thoughts. I want to see if you loved it as much as I do and think that it is going to be the Best Picture winner of this year. Thank you all for watching. My name is Ben Friedman. Take care. Bye-bye.